Bubaraye, Dakolo. And then we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of the team for the Lagos Book and Arts Festival, A Fork in the Road. Because we're taking much time, I'll just start by calling the moderator, Achalugo, Chioma, basically. Chioma. Thank you.
I completely agree, especially the shift that is solid. Just the execution of it, what side is it as well?
I'm projecting this. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to call our author for the evening. His name is His Royal Majesty King Bubaraye Dakolo. So good. Such an honor. Growing up and watching on the TV, I've always dreamt of, either being in a role where I'm beside the king or being beside one or having something to say to them. How does it feel to be real? Just good. Sometimes they tell us that on easy life the end of years to crown. I'm sure that that's what's really the case. So for those of us on Zoom, hello, and those of us in the house, hi. I'm going to quickly read his bio for us. I'll take it from the back of his book. His Royal Majesty King Bubaraye Dakolo, the Nandowe of the Betiama Kingdom in Niger-Delta State, is a well-read and traveled writer. Amidst several educational fields, he holds a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry, a postgraduate diploma in chemical engineering, a postgraduate diploma in education, and a Master of Arts degree in terrorism, international crime, and global security. So I see that you're very, very well read. And in one of the chapters of the book, it was the first thing I was going to ask you. There's a bit where you say that it's a taboo to be poor amidst plenty. And it was written around a place where you very clearly wrote about the importance of education. Has this always been, were you one of those children that right from nursery ones they were carrying first, or you grew into realizing the importance of education?
Okay, thank you so much. My mother was a school teacher. She was the third lady that got prestigious standard 6 certificate in Niger Kingdom those days. And then my father was also educated to that level in those days. And then, of course, all my elder siblings were in schools. First university graduate from my community used to be my. But growing up, I've listened to a lot of music, and there's one that says it is just a bad thing to be poor, especially when wealth. So the case of the Niger-Delta, the case of Bayelsa State, the case of the Chioma people, is a case of the people that are wealthy but are living as paupers. So you have the money, you are rich, but you prevented from being rich, so to speak. So that's the diet.
So this prevention, would you say that some of it is as a result of the oil crisis and pollution in the region, or could you also say that some of it is also from a lack of personal motivation from some of the individuals?
It is about motivation to have more time, average supply. You look around this country, Niger-Delta, young and old, have been at the forefront of almost everything in terms of development and so on. So for motivation, that is not an issue. We are well motivated. But, and we can also, if we go down memory lane, when the first few Europeans came to the shores of Africa, they met us first as the hosts, and then we traded with them. And so we've always been rich. And in terms of dealing with them too, we showed sufficient rates. That was why almost every point in time we had to take the rules to try to get an advantage. Because if you follow the rules, you're doing better. You have to do something else to try to get an advantage. And so all through, we are comfortable. Now, when colonialism started, the slave trade, after the palm oil trade, and then when colonialism started, we are still doing quite well. But in 1956, when oil was discovered, we did quite well as well at that point, up till 1967 to 69, when things actually changed, and things have not gotten better till this moment.
For the benefit of those who are just joining us on Zoom, this session is called The Joy of Reading, and we are looking at the book, The Riddle of the Oil Thief by His Royal Majesty King Bubaraye, Dakolo. So I find that you're very, very busy. You know, you've written a book that is, we call it creative nonfiction. And we're speaking about the joy of reading today. It takes a lot for some people to pick up text like this. Because beyond the sort of books we read, you know, when you're in school or the university, you're told you have to read certain texts. And then when you come out, the rest of the books, some people try to read fiction text. So when it comes to reading books like this that are non-fiction, sometimes it's like, what do I have to do? The joy of reading actually tells us that, you know, Laba has run this for over 23 years. I think this is the 23rd edition, and it's a session. Laba is a session where people can come, publishers, book readers, writers, everybody comes to discuss. So the joy of reading, you need to understand that it goes beyond our fiction books. And I'd like to come back to you. When you were writing this book, did you think in any way that you needed to make it? Were you thinking about the market, like, oh, how interesting do I have to write this? Or your approach was just, I need to document?
Thank you. The motivation was to fill the gap, a complete misinterpretation, a complete misplacement of what the book is. So that was the purpose, not at all business or market. It was like, we must fill the space, lest we die and we regret. So that was the motivation. Out there's nothing like this. Yes, everything out there, largely, a few small attempts may have been made, but largely is the story or the version of the oil transnationals, the government of this country, particularly the government, the agencies of government responsible for oil and gas, and then foreign governments. Okay, they have told a big lie, sustained it, so much so that sometimes, if you are not careful, even though you are part of the crowd, because you believe it as if it is true. For example, most persons in Bayelsa may feel that yes, we are poor, but I know that that is not true, it's a lie. And sometimes it gets a little even vexed when you look at the pages of the newspaper, and you see that they say Bayelsa State, for example, is solvent. Okay, that means we don't get enough money. How can that, for people who have so much money underneath that? How can they that be taken away and then now say they're insolvent? So the objective was to fill that space with the fact, you may call it creative nonfiction. The reason why names are not really there in that sense, just to avoid litigation. Otherwise, every single sentence is the truth. And if you have my type of background, you do not have a choice than to write this.
I'm going to leave the mic with you so that we don't keep going back and forth. Exactly. So I actually agree with everything that you just said now, especially reading the book. There's a chapter where you say, it just lays credence to what you just said, where you say that data is king. You know, the amount of knowledge that we do not have is as a result of people not documenting these things. And, you know, I read this bit where you were speaking about trespass, where some people feel that at some point in the past, we had given these oil corporations, you know, the right to come in and pillage the land, pillage the waters, you know, the farmlands and everything. But there's no document to that fact. And you say if there is indeed a document, it would be somewhere in a museum. So I don't know which is worse, not having documentation or having document, or the idea that we're not even sure documentation may be in some parts, you know, in some museum outside Nigeria. So at the end of the day, we have people say, oh, this is as a result of witchcraft, or, you know, what do we call it again, natural occurrences. So books like this, at the end of the day, are books that we need to write, are books that we need to read. So what was your research like? Did you have other texts like this to draw from?
No, I avoided reading texts.
Okay.
Anything like this.
So there was enough words of mouth.
Actually, I've not seen the text. Now, on the subject that we are dealing with, which is the pivot on which Nigeria stands, I would say I have some credentials which I should read. First, I was born 3 years, contrary to what you've always known as a baby. So that's my mother's community. Now, I went to the first refinery quarters, the MPRC quarters. That was the first ever Nigeria's first refinery at Eleme, and this is Eleme. I lived there for several years. And I walked from that place to Okrika, where my primary school was. And the picture of my primary school is this book. So I used to walk to school on top of these naked pipelines every day for 6 years. Every school day for 6 years. We were avoiding the roads, even the roads were dangerous for school. And the distance is between 3 and 4 kilometers. So you do it twice, about 7 kilometers every day.
The original Fitzpatrick.
Yes. So that's potential number 2. Number 3, after my primary school, I returned to Ogbia Kingdom, very close to oil and wine, where Shell's pioneer operational base, operational headquarters in Nigeria was. So it means that in those days, that was Shell, their quarters, okay? A bustling place. Now, because of the war, they had abandoned it. Okay, so it was now like an abandoned set of buildings. So the government started a secondary school there. So I was one of the privileged few who survived the war. That's a privilege. Survived the war. To now go and live in that place and school. Incidentally, because my mother was a pioneer matron at the school, I had to live in the quarters, more like living where the Europeans used to stay. Now, at that time, the activity or the atrocities of oil and gas were still dripping fresh. So they were still fresh. So I walked around everywhere, went to every single location, went to the aerodrome, saw the pipelines, vandalized what's after the war, and so on. I saw all of this. Now, I am from the Equatorial Kingdom, where as we speak now, about 60,000 barrels of oil equivalent of gas is being siphoned every day. That is well over 2 billion naira. That is happening. I went to the okay, member of 38 regular corps. I am also being an activist. When I became very vocal in terms of looking at these injustices. So I did that as well. I'm a traditional ruler. I also live in the Equatorial Kingdom, I live in the Niger-Delta. I've also taught almost everywhere in Niger-Delta has been requirements. And then, of course, I've been to a bit of school, not much of school. Traditionally, not much of school, but sufficient to be able to tell this story. More so, what will you do if you're in their shoes? When someone says you're the thief, when really, he's the thief and you know it. So thieves have been calling us thieves for so long when they are really the thieves. So it was like, let us correct this. It's too late. Because very soon, perhaps, the oil wells will run dry. And then the story will remain that sometimes. In fact, the other part is that, particularly for security agencies, when they come to the Niger-Delta, they come with their mindset of coming to deal with those bloody economic saboteurs, those pipeline vandals, those oil thieves. That's the psychology. Luckily, because of my background, I meet most of them. So the first thing I do essentially is to ask a few key questions, and then they come to realize that it's like we came with the wrong mindset. So as a matter of fact, this is recommended for every soldier, every police, every security agent in this country as a first measure. Otherwise, don't come to the Niger-Delta. Because when you read it, you will understand what your duties are, and you will understand who you want to consider as the enemy of state. The enemy of state is not anywhere around. They are somewhere around here or there.
Okay, so I'm very glad that there are various mediums of documenting our stories. Some people choose films, some people, you've chosen a book. I want to know if you're looking to any other medium, say a documentary, because I've been reading it and I've been telling myself that this is something people need to see, and people who are not going to be able to read. Are we looking to have like a documentary somewhere, somehow?
Yes, a lot of persons have told me, like the first young woman I gave this document to manuscript. She read it, I don't know if she cried, but she said she cried like 20 times. Anyway, she's from Niger-Delta. So she cried like 20 times, and she feels that this book can be again, blockbuster movies like that. So the documentaries and the movies and all will come. But like a friend of mine who is a cinematographer, he says that it's usually good for the book to move the market out after a while before the film comes. But some young persons have talked about short films and all that. So that is out there. We're looking for, waiting for the right experts to come and let's out. Because it's very important. I believe that if you understand this book, you will understand why Nigeria is the way it is, and then you will also understand what to do to fix it if you want to fix it. I feel that if you give me Nigeria now to handle, in 3 years we'll be a world power. Yes, can be so it's very possible. So if you read it with that type of mindset, you will see everything there. You see that the reason why Nigeria is this not so wonderful is because, for example, about $3 trillion US dollars of oil has been sold as a portion that reaches Nigeria. And out of it, about 1 trillion was outrightly stolen. Okay, put in foreign banks, used outside of this place as yachts, as what you call them, as private jets, as golf courses abroad, as refineries abroad, and properties and so on and so forth. So they were never available for the 90 million poorest of the poor persons of the world who are said to be Nigerians. Because if that were there, for example, then I can tell you categorically that there will have been nobody to identify as Boko Haram. There will have been nobody to identify as unarmed bandits. There will be no bandits, right? The bandit. There will be nobody to be called bandits, unknown gunmen, kidnappers. Even armed robbers will have been there. Because looking at you, I can't see you be an armed robber. I don't think you can do that. So when you have the training, once you have the education and you have the business, okay, and your family also are gainfully engaged, You don't need to go and rob anybody. I've been to places, even in this country sometimes, where your car is not an issue. Nobody is bothering about it, whether it's locked or nobody is going to attempt it. But you can agree with me that there are parts of Lagos today. And even if you take a 1914 little there, by the time you enter somewhere and come out, someone is moving something.
Yeah.
And then when you come, you say, how many times I want it, now you want to be waiting.
Okay, so let's go back to your friend. When I read the book, I didn't cry per se. No, you said somebody read the book. Okay. Your friend read the book and then she said she cried. I didn't cry. For me, it was more like, interestingly, it gave me a little bit of happiness, that so much knowledge has been put down. You know how they say my people perish for lack of knowledge. But I did have a painful chapter. And I'm going to share my painful chapter, and I'm going to ask you that read the book, your most painful chapter. Mine was the one titled Whom and Do. And that chapter speaks about how one region that has been declared as the most economical in terms of profits by the oil corporations is actually the region that has suffered the most, as you put it, economic strangulation, environmental degradation, crises and crimes against humanity. So that was my most painful chapter. So which of the chapters was your most painful chapter?
It's not difficult to pinpoint, but there's somewhere towards chapters around 30, and there's somewhere where women, girl child, is being brutally abused. You can imagine when you have like 4,000 men come to this space, the Freedom Park. The 4,000 all men squad come to this park. And we have about 1,005 natives. Okay, so old men, women, and children now are the indigenous there. So when you have those 4,000, because they are cut off somewhere with creeps, okay, and they stay with you, and they are well resourced. They have resources, they have money, they are richer than the poorest of them is richer than the richest man in the community. So you can imagine how much influence they have. And so they abuse your daughters at 12, 13. If you are 14 and 15, it's like you are not. So they abuse those girls. They take away your sisters, your daughters, your wives, and so on and so forth, and abuse them. And nothing happens. Okay? And then the worst one is people even try to justify that she don't shout now. She cry, can't beat you. It's like, what do you mean? Okay, but that woman is an actor, so what? And so in that chapter, I gave an example of Berlusconi, that's the Italian president, who was jailed for sleeping with an actress that was rich, comfortable, and normal. So normal person. So she had, it's like, it's not because of money. Okay, she was good looking, she was rich, she was educated, she had everything. And that he slept with her when she was not yet at 18. So when he ceased to be president, he was prosecuted and jailed for child abuse, for rape. Okay? Now, in the Niger-Delta, the facts are that if you do not have education, you do not have resources at your disposal, your thinking will not be as right. You will be smiling when you don't need to smile. You'll be saying yes when you need to say no. Okay? So in that kind of environment, you carry a so-called billionaire, okay, an oil man. So he goes there and he just abuses them anyhow. Your mother, the daughter, and the wife of the son, and all of us. Without problems. And someone feels that, but you know firsthand, because she's 35. What? This woman does not have consent anymore. Her life circumstances have made her to be a child, so to speak. It's like someone taking the advantage of a mad woman. And you say, well, she's 60, so she's an adult. But she's sick. So the circumstances of the Niger-Delta have largely made most of them to be seeking votes. Okay? So if you are doing that, which, like I tell some people, I say, okay, if you want to know, if you want to argue that the Niger-Delta is loose, okay, then I want to challenge the MD of Shell International to come to Nigeria, okay, and go and approach, go and meet the chief judge of the House of State. She's a woman. Her name is Kika. Okay? So she's the chief judge. So go and meet her and then toast her. Okay? And come back with evidence. Okay? Because it won't happen. She has the resources, she has the education, she has the position. So you can't even get close to her. So why won't people see that those women, even though in their 30s or 40s or 20s, are so vulnerable because their grandfathers had no job, their fathers had no job, they don't have jobs, and they are not also educated. So this is what they call weaponization. You've taken my resources and used them as weapons to deal with us. And even when we try to complain, we are,
Quite passionate. And I actually see, if you people read the book, every now and then, there's a reference to his wife, Her Royal Majesty. I think it's in my head, Queen Sibini period, So, and it's interesting that if you read, you see that I think she's a doctor, right?
No, she's not.
Okay, but she works in some medical field.
You're mixing it up.
Okay, I am.
I'm mixing it up. The reference to Her Majesty is only at the beginning.
Okay.
But it is the what they call protagonist, right? The main character.
Where is Amara, your publisher?
Yes, the main character of the book, who is General Bubaraye, is the one whose wife is a medical doctor and works somewhere.
Here we are. Who is Colonel Buba?
Colonel Buba is real, but also not real. So the name is adjusted just to make sure that no one is identified as that person who came to the palace to visit the king and then started this process.
So Colonel Buba is not Royal Majesty. Brigadier Buba is not His Royal Majesty. Bubaraye. It's not. Okay, because it took me a while to get to understand that. If you read the book, then in fact, I think at this point you can see that there are three narrators in the book. There's this Brigadier Buba, and there's yourself, and then there's also interestingly Dakolo, who is said to be. I liken her to what the Igbo would call the goddess Achalugo, like the spirit of the Niger-Delta. What inspired you using her as part of your narrative?
Okay, I've been an activist, and I've been a soldier as well. And the Jaws are largely self-confident warriors, always defended territories. Okay? And I've been more like schooling visitors to Niger from time. For say I left the military, I've been like schooling them when they come by me. Let them understand, take them to why they take them to this place, take them to slave sites, and so on and so forth. I've been doing that. But I discovered that, of course, I was talking to my friends and colleagues, or colleagues. But I saw that the time I spent there was never sufficient. Okay, so I speak with you for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Definitely not enough for you to be smart enough to understand issues. And of course, people come by, find their PhDs, with a master's degree, come around, want to know about oil and gas, tell you a lot of things, go back and get a degree. But it's like, I think I should do a little more. I should have a reference material so that after our interaction, you could go back, and then if you want more, you have more. So that was key, another key motivating part of it. So essentially, this is not going to fill that gap. I believe we'll always have a couple of copies in the palace, for particularly first time discussed. If you have not seen it before, this has to be what you take away. And then if you are doing research, again, this is it. So, yes, a friend read through the manuscript and he said that it says it's like there are 2 or 3 aspects of me in the book. But if you know me a little better, you will say, if you know me a little better, you will say that there are much more than 3 aspects of the king in the book. Okay, but they are there just to make sure that the story hits home. It is a very sensitive, touchy story. However, it has to be like food, palatable. It has to be tasty. And it has to drive home the facts and figures without leaving you bored. So that these factors were taken into cognizance. Now, Dakolo, even in terms of the naming, at a point, it was like, okay, how does one treat this book for it to be a universal book, something everyone would like to identify with? Okay, that was considered. I look back at Things Fall Apart. I what Things Fall Apart was written by a 20-something-year-old man in the 50s. Okay, so if I'm writing this book as a very old man of 106, for example, it should be a wonderful book. So one was determined to make it as wonderful as it could be, but still having the facts. And then, given the fact that the subject itself is an explosive subject, it was also okay to play safe, so that someone does not come tomorrow morning and say, oh, you know, my papa named this, and my mama named this. So we have to look at it. Dakolo, yes, someone said yesterday, my surname is Dakolo, and then there's this other Jimmy or somebody is Dakolo. But Dakolo is also an Ijaw word that means our voice. Okay, Dakolo, my surname is Dakolo. Dakolo is actually Dakolo, which means father's voice. This particular character is Dakolo, which means our voice. So it's the voice of the Niger-Delta, it's the voice of the people of that area, it's the voice of those who have been abused and trampled upon, whose environment has been destroyed. So that is the voice we hear.
Very interesting. I'm coming back to, I want to go away from the book for a bit.
Okay.
You know, I want us to go to the culture just a little bit. You're a traditional ruler, and you know, going back to the Dakolo reference, like I said, I could liken her to, when I was reading, I could liken her to what the Igbos would call, you know, the Honey Goddess. So I believe that in embracing who we are, you know, our history, our present, we have to embrace it holistically, and that includes our spirituality.
Yes.
You know, so what's your take on African spirituality?
Well, I think it is there and has to, and serves a great purpose. For communities that are denying that, you see that they are largely unrest. Okay, for those who are still holding on to it, the do's and don'ts are still kept. So I think that it's important that we keep referencing that and keep emphasizing it. And before you go too far, the Niger-Delta Hall of Fame is actually a reality. It is there. Just that you have to earn the right to go in there to see things for yourself. So it is not as fictional as some persons will want to think, but it is actually there. And that was how, so I didn't do too much work. I just had to copy the handwriting on the wall.
But for His Royal Majesty himself, what could we say is your own approach to God as a person?
God.
When you fit in that form, when they say religion, what do you usually think?
Well, as a young child, I was introduced to Christianity, but I am very inquisitive, so I question everything, and I question enough to embrace Ekaka. And then I question enough to become a scientist. So I am a scientist, which means that whatever your belief system may be, you must have a way of proving it to me. So if you cannot prove it, it's fine. I understand where you're coming from, but I want to really emphasize that proof, not just, you know, because a lot of persons have been scammed in the name of religion and religious beliefs, and a lot are still being scammed. So most of what we embrace as religion these days, whichever form, most of it are deliberate by certain characters just to have undue advantage of you and I. So I want to always say, with evidence now. Because, for example, if you have a particular notion of God, and you've been praying every day, and every year is your breakthrough year, so that you have money, and every year you're still broke. I want to wonder where you're keeping your brain. Okay? So, for example, Nigerians are quite religious, and the more churches you have, the more religious houses you have. The church is not for Christians alone anyway. So the more religious houses you have, the more crime, and the more poverty, and the more cheating, and the more scamming. So what is that? When it wasn't there, when Andy was reigning supreme, the people were organized, law-abiding, and they're imperfect. Today, people are ruthless, okay? There is money or nothing. You can just kill your twin brother. So I'm wondering, where is God in all of this? Okay, so I'm fairly spiritual. I hold on to my belief system. According to a friend of mine, Dr. Samamani, who wrote the foreword, he says he's a pastor himself, but he says if you come to him and you tell him, I'm a man of God, he first of all has to tie his pocket and be sure that because anybody that comes with that in front, they have something at the back of his mind. I think he brings something, but basically I'm a scientist.
So who is His Royal Majesty when he's not writing? When he's not also, when you're taking a break from work as it would be?
His Royal Majesty is the Lord of the Kingdom since 2016. That is what it is. And as much as possible, there are a couple of traditional do's and don'ts, which one has to keep, one keeps them religiously. As a matter of fact, the only free time I would say I've had in the last couple of years was last month when I went to Ghana. That was the only time that I was more or less not like the king that I am. I had to just be myself. I had to wear a t-shirt. No one knew me. I had to walk around. I had to go somewhere and all of that. And by the way, that has inspired a new book. I've already done 20,000 words on that. So I am a fairly active person. Okay, so I do sports. I still can do push-ups with one hand. Yeah, I can do 500 push-ups if I want.
You used to be in the military.
Yes, I used to be.
It never goes away.
And I also like the Niger-Delta environment. Okay, is aside the pollution that is huge, one still tries to make that pristine paradise that it used to be. So if you come around the palace, it is much better than what you read in this book. Okay, it is a place if you come, you may not want to go back.
I'm coming.
So right now I found this voice in writing, and there's a lot of it. There are like 2 books that are supposed to come after this, okay, that are similar to this. My autobiography is ready in manuscript form. It's the young lady that is putting it before I send to the publishers. And everything else is the king's life, settling up disputes, trying to ensure that the biosol state, is projected in its true light, trying to make sure that our own stool is a place where it should be, that is likely done even in this book. So everything I do, including this particular time they have, is a way of saying that the Paternal Kingdom, biosol state, and the Niger-Delta is done a lot and is doing a lot in this country, and we deserve fundamental oil and gas rights.
Okay, so one more personal question before I throw to the audience and see if you have questions from Sue. I read a bit. Okay, now that's in my head, I'm like, is this the Brigadier or is this His Royal Majesty? But you were in the army, and A narrator in the book says that his wife was concerned about the uncertainties of the army life.
Yes.
Was this true for you? How was it like managing that part of your life and marriage when you were in the military?
While I was in the military, I was not married. However, that is true for every military man. Because depending on what duties you have or what postings you have, your wife, if not a military person, is not exactly like you. Okay? So you never can know when you return in a body bag. Yes, and then how would she feel? How does she carry on after that? So it's not an easy thing. I can just feel some sensation now around me thinking about this for all my comrades and arms, irrespective of rank. So it's a big sacrifice, okay, that they are making for this country. Unfortunately, the political class has not been able to properly fine-tune some of these agencies, okay, to do the job the way it ought to be, okay? But long and short is that every military person has this concern for family. More so when you are called, sure, you're always on duty, so it's not whether you're sent to Liberia or sent to Afghanistan, that's anything about your family, no. But it's almost every time you have a post. And come to think of it, there are some that hardly will spend out of maybe a 60-year life, you may hardly spend sufficient time with your family. So if you're married for 20, 30 years, maybe the time you spend with your family effectively is 2 years, because you're almost always on the road, moving from one place to another. So it's a lot of sacrifice. And I just wish that the policymakers will read this book, understand it, fine-tune it, and fine-tune the country such that the police will be allowed to do the police job and the military be assigned to their duties. Because really, from the Civil War days till tomorrow morning, the police has been emasculated, okay, where the military does police job, okay, instead of the police doing police work. So that is the story, and that means everything has gone upside down. Like that place I had to quote that Admiral, the Galactica man, that says that if there's a difference between the military and the police, okay, their duties are different. While the police is to ensure that daily life is good for all of us, the military's job essentially is to protect the country, the territorial integrity of the country from particularly external aggressors. And that when the military is called in to do police job, either because maybe the police was not able to quite do it, and the military takes over, and they do that for a long time, okay, they begin to see the citizens as the enemies of the state, because that's their calling. Their training is to face categorically and aggressively the enemies of the state. And so if you put me here as a military man, to be doing some kind of duties for so long, I begin to see you as the enemies of the state and deal with you accordingly. That is why some of these conflicts we have, you can see that the way the citizens are dealt with. Like in OT case was the case of some less than a dozen persons killing a few law enforcement agents, okay? And then the military came as if it was a war and bombed down the place and razed down the entire community. Killed well over 2,000 persons. Okay, that was during the Obasanjo's regime. And that is not the only case. Ubuche was similar. 200 persons were killed. This was by mobile policemen that the shell company brought to the community because the people were protesting. So most of the time, the way the system deals with the citizens is that of seeing the citizens as the enemies of the state. And that has to stop. The military or law enforcement is a creation, it's supposed to be a creation of the nation, okay, to attend to certain aspect of our needs. It is not the people versus debate. No, people versus black first. No, it is actually supposed to be the people. But because of the history of colonialism, it's been somehow for so long.
I've been asked to let you read from your favorite portion. Okay, what you like? Do I have a choice? There's a bit where I didn't know you could sell slave. And I read it, and I said, it's actually slave. When he said, my mother taught us not to do slave, I said, wow, you're very typical. Were you raised like those kind of mothers that they laugh about those things? She threw slippers at you.
She had no slippers.
She had, Okay, so this monarchy, is it something that devolves family to family? Was your father also the
No.
Oh, okay.
But in a way, you have to qualify
Okay.
to be in a way of the Bitiana. I have written a few places. I think that let's go to.
I think that's in the space of page 59.
No, let's go to chapter 21. Let's go to chapter 21. Then, but if you go to chapter 21, you will not. It's not like in the middle. You may not quite understand the substance of the book. However, it is okay to take a bit of chapter 21. Nigeria. Okay, so I'm reading from page 200. I have that much time. Or is it the camera? It's a video. Right. Okay, so I'm reading from 207. Okay. Nigeria, with over 200 million people, is the most populous country in Africa, with one of the largest population of youths in the world. It has the largest economy in the continent and is one of its top crude oil producers. Nigeria has the second largest crude oil reserve in the continent and is the 12th highest producer in the world. Over 85% of its revenue comes from oil, but about 90 million of its people, 48% of the population, are amongst the poorest in the world. A remarkably high percentage of Nigeria's crude oil and oil revenue are being lost to thieves, corporations, and individuals. It neither serves the oil-bearing and facilities hosting people, nor the teeming masses of Nigerians. It does not serve the 90 million poorest of the poor peoples of the world, who are Nigerians. So who does it serve? And why so is the question. The 1001 names listed on this wall are the names of merchants, soldiers of fortune, security agents, politicians, oil subsidy billionaires, top petroleum sector players, and military officers who directly served in one era or another, in one capacity or the other, or never served at all in the Niger-Delta, but corruptly enriched themselves from petrodollars. Some have never been here and do not care to be here, but do not care to be, but have been allotted portions from where they siphon the oil or the oil money system. The 773rd name there, Commodore Menkunu Gambaba, is the name of the CTF/OPSD commander whom you replaced. So here I think Wokule is talking about Bubaraye, okay, whom you replaced. He is one of the most recent to make the list. He was here in the Niger-Delta as commander for only 7 months, and he went crazy, literally. About halfway into his tour of duty, he bought a dozen choice properties in Dubai, 2 dozen properties in Banana Island, a refinery in Durban, and the famous 4 billion naira hilltop mansion in New Asokoro, Africa. He is also the owner of the popular strippers club, the Dreamers Nightclub in Accra, Ghana, which disdains modesty and decency. During the short time that he was in charge, 38 local communities were burned down. 108 persons were killed, and thousands were rendered homeless. Despite his grant, there was not a known oil thief. Okay, there was no known oil thief that he arrested. He just threw smoke everywhere. Throwing smoke is actually a Twitter. He just threw smoke everywhere. To make matters worse, one Saturday night, 29 of his soldiers fell to the effective fire of contending marauders in the creeks. Pipeline vandalism peaked to an all-time high during this time. And he went on voluntary retirement the very month he was redeployed to the Northeast as commander of Operation 90 against popular protests by local and international child rights activists. He got married to a 14-year-old Yemeni bride in a lavish ceremony before the end of that same month. There are lots of damning reports on his other activities by international human and environmental rights groups. But he cares less. He has since joined the main party in a public ceremony at Abuja, where he donated his luxury jets to the board of trustees, to each board of trustees. He has also been penciled as the gubernatorial hopeful of his state in the next round of elections. That is the language of the petrodollars here. It speaks so unequivocally. Elsewhere, he would be having a permanent concrete floor space in jail.
Yes. It's fine. As of time. Okay, thank you so much, sir. And thank you to our audience. Thank you to everybody who joined us on Zoom. Yes. Oh, we have some questions from Zoom. Amara, can we take a question?
Yes.
Okay, could you please note the questions from Zoom and then let's have the ones from Facebook?
So, listen, not yet that's where you know, we say, okay, it's trouble. I mean, it's okay, the unit now. It's quite interesting listening to you on Niger-Delta. The trouble is only to say, okay. So time, the palace and chiefs that manage communities have identified as some problems we have and why some youths to come even against the other people. So the IOC specialize in divide and rule. So they go to the palace, actually, give them what And of course, it's quite representative of what the community needs. But because it is such a lot of this to go on. How do you respond to that? We have a charge.
Okay. Thank you so much. There are a lot of possibilities, but what you must know, and that is perhaps why you need to read this book, is that first, the oil and gas business has been around us for 7 decades. And so what you have today is largely a creation of that corrupt industry. Okay? So the industry has cleverly corrupted, perverted the environment such that the structure is not exactly what it used to be. So those compromises are possible. But if you ask me, am I going to blame them? Am I not rather going to blame a government? If you read the book, there's when they drilled first, 1956 to 58, the people of Otabagi and environment celebrated with everyone. Okay? So in the 60s, the 50s, there was no crisis. In the 60s, no crisis. 70s, no crisis. 80s, no crisis. Late 90s, crisis started. Why? What were you doing when you had a baby? You didn't school him, you didn't groom him, you didn't do anything until he has grown horns on his head. That is when you want to come and cut it. So, the Niger-Delta communities, as accused, are creations of the federal government of Nigeria in collaboration with the IOCs and their governments to be the aberration that they have become. I have no blame whatsoever for that, because I've been a teacher, and I believe that you shouldn't blame the student, you should blame the teacher who taught the children. So whether king or chief or hooligan or no hooligan, they are creations of